You might remember a video that I made recently of a TCL-Roku TV, separating the LCD panel from the backlight and looking at the quantum dot part in it. Here you can see a little video of that. Today, we're going to try to get it reassembled. Now it's time to see if I can get this thing put back together. So I've got the optical films back in place. There really was just one film and then the quantum dot extruded part. So those are back in place. I use my trusty lint roller to get rid of any obvious black chunks or hairs. And now I'm putting on this holder here, which snaps right into place actually quite nicely. Let's hope we can get it in all the way. Okay. So now I've got to flip this over and take the back panel off and work on getting all the wires lined back up again before I put the LCD back on. So let's do that now. Hopefully this will all straighten out in the end. These TVs are surprisingly light. So I just have 4 little screws in the back here to hold that back panel on to protect it while it was flipped on its back. And now the task at hand is to get these ribbon cables back into position where they were when I started. I had to move them to do the demonstration with the LCD separated and have some wiggle room there, but I really have to get them lined back up perfectly. You can see they were nicely folded by the manufacturer and taped down, and wires all tucked in nice and neat. So I'm going to do my best to recreate that. I've got to get the speakers hooked back up here. There's just 2 speakers in this unit. I hope I've got them on the right side. And really it's the speakers, the ribbon cables, the receiver for the remote control, and then ultimately reconnecting the LCD. That's going to be the challenging part coming up next. So now I've got everything put back together in the electronics, I think, and I'm going to flip it back over so then we can connect the LCD to these 2 ribbon cables here, and then we'll try and put the LCD on. I'll probably flip the LCD over first and then connect them though. Okay, so let's get the TV flipped back face up. So here I'm getting that back panel put back on with a few screws, because again I'm going to flip it onto its back now. Checking for any more little pieces of lint, dirt, cat hair, because I really don't want that to be sandwiched between the LCD and these optical films, because I think I'll see that there. And then I'm going to be very carefully cleaning off the LCD now. The size of these pixels are on the order of a couple of 100 microns or something like that. So if there is a piece of adhesive or a piece of hair there, there's a good chance you'll be able to see it when you're watching TV. And this is clearly not a clean room, so I'm going to do my best to clean this off really well before I put it back on. I suggest an extra pair of hands to do this. We really don't want to fold this LCD too much. It is flexible because the glass is so thin, but it's really important to keep it steady and supported in the middle. I've got a hand underneath and then a hand on the edge, kind of lining it up so we can get these connectors all lined up. So now we've got the LCD flipped over, but these ribbon cables, which are a little fragile, kind of need to get tucked in, and then I will connect them underneath after we flip this over. So I'm going to see if I can gently just nudge these in there. And we will get everything hooked up properly inside.
Well, actually, I can get them in their little holders. That would be ideal. Let's do that. Now, it's going to require some tape and things in there to get it to stay where I want it, but for now, at least it's tucked in out of the way. Now, the big problem is going to be that we ruined that adhesive along the perimeter here. And so now this LCD just wants to fall off the TV. So on the bottom, we will have this holding it in place, but along the rest of the TV, I might have to add some adhesive or something to keep it in place. Okay, so now we're going to use some electrical tape or duct tape, I haven't decided which yet, to get this LCD to stay so it doesn't fall off. Let's see how the electrical tape works. The electrical tape looks pretty nice. You can barely tell it's there. Now I'm overlapping this over the edge of the LCD only a little bit where the pixels are not active. The adhesive doesn't work anymore between the LCD and the back panel there because I used a heat gun and a knife to remove it before, so that's why we've got to use something else to hold this together. So let's hope this works. Yeah, that looks pretty nice considering. I can barely tell it's there. Okay, so now I have the electrical tape all the way around 3 sides of the TV, but not on the bottom. And so now I'm going to flip the TV back on its face, take the rear cover off again. There's a lot of back and forth here with the cover. And we're going to see how these ribbon cables line up to the connectors on the PCB. And they're pretty darn close. So I'm going to get those latched into place now, and then we'll move on. Now I can snap these into place a little bit better too, these PCBs. Now there was a little strip of tape on a few of them. I think it might have just been to ground them, or it was to add some extra support. There it is. Yeah, that's the grounding pads right there. Wonder if I can find the one over here. Yep, there it is. Good, get that back on. These actually lined up surprisingly well. I'm actually going to snap these in place first here. So now I'm going to flip the TV back on its face, take the rear cover off again. There's a lot of back and forth here with the cover. And we're going to see how these ribbon cables line up to the connectors on the PCB. And they're pretty darn close. So I'm going to get those latched into place now, and then we'll move on. Those both appear to be in. I'll reconnect it there. That's where it's grounded. I think we're ready to test it. So now we've got these ribbon cables hooked back up. I've tested the TV. It looks like from underneath the LCD appears to be working. So the next step is to put on this protector on the bottom, and then we're ready to button it back up and get it up on the stand. I can't stress enough when you're doing this how careful you really need to be with those bent ribbon cables that ultimately are feeding information from the brains of the TV in the back here up to the LCD.
You know, any nick on one of those or kink or bend really could mess up this TV. So I've been lucky enough with most of the ones I've done that I've not damaged those, but that's a word of caution to you. So I'll get the receiver back on for the remote here. Just a couple of screws there. That's pretty simple. When you're doing this, I would exercise caution around, especially the power supply, which you can see on the right side here. There's some capacitors on there that you really want to be careful not to touch, especially when you're powering this on to test it when the back is open. So I get the back panel back on now. I'm going to spare you from the umpteen number of screws that I have to put on this thing, but there's a lot of them. And then we'll get the feet on so we can get this stood up. So remember, this is held together now on the bottom with that one black plastic part and around the perimeter with electrical tape. It really looks pretty good, and you can't hardly tell it's there. And let's see if it works. Here is the moment of truth. And it works. We even have volume. How about that? Barely tell. I taped it back together. Clean that up on the corners a little bit. So there you go. Got this thing taken apart, analyzed, and put back together, and so far I don't see any problems with it. So I'm going to use it.